A son tells his mother not to come home, certain his fake Alzheimer's ploy will stay buried. But when the snow melted, truth surfaced like a rusty horseshoe in the mud. She straightened the metal and walked into court. Every healed bone became evidence against her own blood. No notary could weld his greed back together. Evelyn Whitaker woke before dawn, the way she always had when there were animals to feed and dough to rise, even though neither chore had pressed on her for years. At 71, her joints protested each movement, yet the habits of a lifetime still roused her before the first finch tried its song. She lay in the narrow hospital bed and studied the window opposite, a rectangle already paling from midnight blue to pearl. From her third-floor room, she could see only a sliver of the high-line sky over Yverdon, Montana, but that strip of color carried the scent of home. Alfalfa fields still damp with spring melt, distant cottonwoods knuckling the horizon, the hush of miles, and miles of land that let a woman hear her own thoughts. She pressed her palm to her sternum, surprised to find her late husband's dog-tag necklace still there. The nurses had let her keep it on during the procedure 2 nights ago, minor surgery to pin a fractured hip after a fall on black ice outside church. But she checked every few hours as if the steel disc might vanish. Under the date and service number were the words, "Remember who you are." Marvin had the tags re-etched on their 40th anniversary, insisting that the line mattered more than his name. Whenever Evelyn hesitated, she rubbed that tiny raised sentence like a prayer bead and remembered the girl who had crossed 4 states with nothing but grit and gospel hymns to marry the man she loved. A soft knock preceded the entrance of Nurse Mallory, cheeks flushed from the brisk corridor. She took Evelyn's vitals, smiled at the steady numbers, then clipped the chart onto the footrail. "Doctor says you're healing beautifully." "He's writing discharge papers this morning. Praise the Lord," Evelyn murmured. The words came out hoarse, yet hope warmed behind them. Home, her own sheets, faint with lavender water, the kettle singing on the wood stove that Travis installed the year his father passed. And beyond the kitchen window, the straight fence line where she measured each May how far the snow-melt rabbit brush had crept. Mallory helped her sit, carefully adjusting the brace. Even that small shift sent a bolt through Evelyn's side, but she masked the wince. She would not let pain be the face she showed to her neighbors later, nor the first thing her son saw when he walked into the room. Travis respected strength. She would give him nothing less. In the hush after Mallory left, Evelyn reached for her phone on the tray. 6:17 a.m. The battery showed full. She had charged it after evening prayers. Last night, Travis had promised to fetch her first thing, and she pictured his reliable red Chevy idling by the curb, heater roaring, a traveling mug of her mint sage tea steaming in the cup holder the way he liked. She hovered over his contact photo. Travis at age 12, gap-toothed and proud beside the 4-H lamb they'd bottle-fed, then smiled at herself for calling too early. He was likely coaxing his daughters into leggings and snow boots, packing lunches, scraping frost from the windshield. She set the phone down unopened and folded her hands to wait. Minutes slid by in the way hospital minutes do, heavy as wet wool. First came the orderlies stripping neighboring beds, then the clatter of breakfast trays. Evelyn brushed off offers of oatmeal. She wanted bacon at her own stove, and forced herself through the physical therapy walk to the door and back. By 8 o'clock, she was dressed in her Sunday skirt, coat draped across her knees like a promise. Still no call. Outside, clouds spaced themselves like cattle across a pale pasture of sky. Sunlight flashed off distant snowcaps, the blue mountains standing sentinel to the south. She tried not to read meaning into their chill shine. Travis might be caught behind a grain truck on Route 2 or searching for a lost backpack. Life on the High Line respected no clock but its own. 30 minutes later, the phone remained silent. Evelyn pressed the dog tag between thumb and forefinger, whispering, "Remember." She dialed her son. 1 ring, 2, 5, then voicemail. She hung up before the tone. Pride wouldn't let her sound anxious. She texted a simple "ready when you are, darling," and added a winking emoji the grandkids had taught her, hoping the lightness would travel. She waited. The clock's second hand ticked with metronome patience, each click a footstep in an empty hall. At 9:15, the orderly returned with a wheelchair. "Paperwork's done, Ms. Whitaker." "We can roll you to the lobby," Evelyn forced a smile. My boy will be here any minute, she assured him, though the words tasted of tin. She looked again at the phone, the text unread. A breech line fissured the calm surface of her thoughts, but she refused its voice. 40 years of nursing had taught her how swiftly fear can seed infection. She dialed again. Voicemail. Another knock. This time the discharge nurse with forms to sign. "Do you need transport arranged?" the woman asked kindly. "My son's on the way," Evelyn replied. She signed with a hand that hardly trembled. The nurse left, though concern fluttered at the edges of her smile. When the door clicked shut, Evelyn allowed herself one deep breath that shuddered too close to sob. She swallowed it whole. In its quiet echo, she heard Marvin's baritone. "When you can't find faith in the world, girl, find it in yourself." She straightened, buttoned her coat, and clasped the dog tag until its ridged letters printed into her skin. At 10 o'clock exactly, she dialed Travis a third time and raised the phone to her ear, pulse thrumming like distant hoofbeats. Outside the window, the big sky morning had turned, wind-shearing clouds into ragged gray banners. A storm was coming, its restless pressure pushing on the glass. Evelyn listened to the ring, each pause a footstep towards something unnamed until the call dropped again to silence. She lowered the phone, the hush in the room suddenly vast. In that hush, a first seed of dread found soil. Havre Community Hospital's lobby smelled of chlorine and burnt coffee, a scent Evelyn would forever link to winter illnesses and long-ago night shifts. Now she sat near the automatic doors, suitcase balanced on her good knee, and watched a succession of families claim their own. Husbands steadying wives, daughters guiding stooped fathers. She smiled at each reunion, practicing the expression she would give Travis, "Forgiveness first, lecture later." 11:30 crept past. The sky beyond the revolving door bruised from dove to slate. Snow dust rode the wind in tight spirals, needling exposed skin of those who hurried inside. Mallory's shift ended, and the nurse paused on her way out, brow furrowed. "Still waiting?" she asked softly. Evelyn attempted a chuckle. "You know men. If they say 5 minutes, give them 2 hours." She lifted her phone in playful exasperation. Mallory squeezed Evelyn's shoulder, hesitation lingering before she turned to go. The empathy in that touch felt like a hot coal pressed against Evelyn's composure, comforting yet threatening to burn through the thin paper of her calm. She exhaled slowly, counting to 8 the way she once coached new mothers through contraction pain. At noon, she called again. Voicemail. She considered ringing Yvette, polite, polished Yvette with her real estate smile, but the thought wilted. Yvette would claim she hadn't seen Travis, would promise to relay a message, then nothing. The daughter-in-law's silences were thicker than her words. Heavy with judgment, Evelyn pretended not to notice. 12:30. The volunteer at the information desk tapped a sign that read, "No unattended patient discharges." Evelyn's cheeks heated. She rose stiffly, hip pulsing, and wheeled herself to the door. Outside, snow now fell in earnest, flakes fat as cottonseed swirling beneath the portico. Her breath clouded silver. She pressed Travis's contact once more, thumb white at the nail. This time he answered. "Ma," he said, but the note was off, pitched too low, too flat. Behind him came faint laughter, a clink of glass. The sound was unfamiliar, as if he were in a place with soft carpeting and cocktails, not winter boots and hospital corridors. Relief flooded her so quickly she felt dizzy. "Baby, I've been worried," she began, voice trembling despite her will. "I'm at the lobby waiting." "Yeah, about that?" A pause. She pictured him rubbing the back of his neck the way he did before delivering bad news. "Look, Ma, some things changed. We, figured it's best you stay where you are. The doctors think—" "I'm discharged, Travis." She kept her voice even. "Physically fit to come home." In the background, Yvette's laugh flared louder, followed by a muffled stage whisper she couldn't decode. Travis cleared his throat. "They ran more cognitive tests. You know, memory stuff. Results weren't good. They'll discuss options with you. Long-term care, maybe?" Evelyn's vision tunneled. "What tests?" They gave me none after surgery. Ma, don't make this harder. Dr. Hollister signed papers. Power of attorney was transferred last week. What? The word cracked like ice under weight. Another voice. Yvette's answered for him, close to the speaker. It's what's best, Evelyn. You'll get professional help. The line clicked dead. For a heartbeat, noise left the world. The volunteer's stapler, mid-clamp, the heater's drone, even her own pulse, all hushed under a sudden flaming silence. Then sound returned in a roar, blood in her ears, wind hurling sleet at the glass, a child crying somewhere down the hall. Evelyn's fingers spasmed. The phone slid, clattered across tile. She stared after it, unable to bend. Power of attorney. The phrase echoed through her bones. Her signature forged, her mind slandered. Hot prickles danced along her scalp, and for a terrible moment she thought she might faint. Instead, she reached for the dog tag and gripped until metal cut flesh. Faint copper taste bloomed behind her molars. The taste of fight, the taste of blood one bites during childbirth, screams, or last goodbyes. Marvin had called it the soul's pen ink. She inhaled. Remember. A security guard approached, concern etched across his broad features. Ma'am, you okay? I need a rental car, she heard herself answer. Her voice sounded underwater, but carried an iron edge. Nearest agency? He blinked, then directed her across the street to Highline Auto. She thanked him, gathered suitcase and dignity, and rolled out into the storm without another glance at the phone. Each snowflake stung. Tiny knives on fragile skin, yet clarity sharpened with every step. The words "stay where you are" repeated like a drumbeat, but now they meant something else entirely. She would stay where truth lived, and she would dig her heels until it surfaced. In the driver's seat of a dented silver Taurus, she set the heater to full blast, wiped fog from the windshield, and pulled onto US 2. Wind rocked the chassis, snow hissed beneath tires. Ahead lay the town's single main street, then the road twisting west toward home, if home still existed outside Travis's legal sleight of hand. Evelyn flicked on the wipers. They squeaked a rhythm that reminded her of porch swing chains in summer, a memory so vivid it slapped tears into her eyes. She blinked them clear. The highway sign blurred past. Whitaker Road, 3 miles. She kept driving, mind a hard, bright ember. By the time the mailbox bearing her family name appeared, snow coated the post like white ash. She turned up the rutted lane, headlights carving tunnels through flurries. From a distance, the house looked unchanged, porch-light glowing amber, smoke curling from chimney. Relief surged, then faltered as she noticed the car parked beside the stoop. Yvette's luxury SUV, nose tilted arrogantly toward the drifts. Evelyn braked. Tires skidded, stopping yards from the porch. She killed the engine, letting the heater tick into silence. Snow pattered the roof. In that hush, she tasted the copper again, stronger now. She extracted her cane, planted it in powder, and stepped into the storm toward the only door she had ever called hers. The porch floorboards complained under Evelyn's weight, a familiar groan once comforting, now ominous. Warm light flickered behind the lace curtains, Yvette's scented candles, no doubt. Lavender and jasmine masking something rotten. Evelyn lifted a fist and knocked. Her hand trembled less than she expected. Footsteps. The door cracked 2 inches, safety chain latched. Yvette's carefully glossed lips appeared between wood and frame. Evelyn, you should be at the hospital. I've been released. Her breath puffed white. Let me in, Yvette. This is my house. A pause. Behind Yvette's shoulder drifted Travis's shadow, broad and uncertain. Mama, it's not that simple, he began, voice muffled. Snowflakes spun through the gap, melting on Yvette's silk blouse. She frowned at the damp spots like stains of guilt. We have paperwork, she said sharply. Your doctors declared cognitive decline. You need supervised care. Evelyn steadied herself with the cane. Name the doctor. Silence. She pressed. What tests? What facility? Answer me, child. Travis shifted into view, eyes darting. Ma, please don't open this Door something in her tone, steel-wrapped in sorrow, made him flinch, but Yvette's manicured hand shot the bolt deeper. "We'll bring your things to a center tomorrow," she snapped. "You can't stay here." Evelyn's gaze flicked to the porch column where a horseshoe Marvin hung right side up, luck pooled in its curve. Snow had half buried it, yet the rusted iron still held shape, still believed in keeping blessings from spilling. She looked back at her son, and a single resolve forged itself like fresh iron in winter water. "Travis," she said, calm as prayer, "if you shut this door, you shut it forever." His eyes widened, a boy who touched a fence just as lightning struck. But fear, pride, or some darker tether held him. He stepped back into the hallway shadows. The door closed. The bolt slid home with a final snap. Evelyn stood motionless as wind flung snow around her ankles. Something inside her cracked, but it wasn't despair. It was the shell of disbelief shattering, revealing beneath it a core of tempered will. She turned, cane crunching through drift, and descended the steps one deliberate inch at a time. Halfway to the car, she paused, raising her face to the swollen clouds. Snow kissed her lids, her cheeks, tiny freezing stars that melted into tears or maybe just water. She tasted salt, not bitterness, but mineral proof of being alive. When she reached the Taurus, she sat gripping the wheel until numb fingers tingled back to life. The porch light behind her extinguished. Darkness folded the house away like a photograph slid into a drawer. Evelyn started the engine. Headlamps flared, illuminating the horseshoe, the mailbox, the path she would no longer walk tonight. She reversed down the lane, each yard burying the sound of her heartbeat under tire crunch and wind howl. Back on the highway, she did not glance in the mirror again. Ahead lay Havre's Motel Row, a string of vacancy signs blinking red through the storm. Beyond that, lawyers' offices, county clerks, corners where truth might be pried loose. But for now, she drove toward the faint neon glow as though it were a lighthouse. Hand steady on the wheel, dog tag warm against her skin. "Remember who you are." The sentence pulsed with each mile, and somewhere inside, beneath shock and sorrow, a spark caught. Not yet a plan, but the first ember of reckoning, small, stubborn, refusing to die in the gathering dark. Wind rattled the thin aluminum frame of room 12 at the Prairie Lantern Motel, shaking flecks of peeling paint onto the threadbare carpet. Evelyn Whitaker lay atop the stiff mattress, fully clothed, boots unlaced but still on her feet, as if her body refused to admit it had nowhere else to go. Hours earlier, she'd driven through a wall of snow and neon, taken a key from a night clerk, too busy scrolling his phone to notice the tremor in her hands, and stumbled inside with a single suitcase of clothes and the weight of a lifetime suddenly, rendered homeless. The motel heater sighed in uneven intervals, exhaling warm air that smelled vaguely of dust and forgotten summers. Evelyn's thoughts refused the balm. Each time her eyelids sagged, she saw the porch light die, heard the rasp of the chain sliding home. That sound, metal sealing metal, had cleaved her past from her present. She pressed her thumb against Marvin's dog tag until the edges bit, reminding her skin that she was still alive and had work yet undone. Sometime after 3 a.m., exhaustion claimed her in ragged intervals, broken by flashes of memory. Travis's first steps on that polished pine floor, his delighted shriek when she surprised him with a second-hand bike, the way he once defended a bullied kid after school. Where had that boy gone? Each recollection arrived like a snow-heavy branch snapping, sharp, irreversible, echoing into dark forest. She wept soundlessly, biting the motel pillow so that grief would not hear itself. Dawn finally leached into the room at 6:30, pink and thin like skimmed milk. Evelyn's hip throbbed with each attempt to sit, but she forced herself up. The mirror above the dresser showed a face cracked with sleepless lines, yet alight with a strange clarity. The look of a woman who had passed through fire and come out the far side, still holding her own name. She washed, changed into a fresh blouse, braided her silver pepper curls, then folded the Gideon Bible from the nightstand into her purse. No scripture for comfort, she needed it as evidence of a vow. Let truth be the sword and mercy the sheath. Outside, the storm had hushed, leaving soft drifts sculpted into dunes across the lot. Her silver Taurus sat half-buried, antenna jutting like a flag of surrender. She brushed snow from the windshield and drove toward town, past Stubble wheat fields glazed white past the silent grain elevators that marked Havre's horizon like rough-hewn cathedrals. Every mile made a mantra of 4 words: prove who you are. At 8 a.m., she pushed open the glass door of the First Light food pantry, a converted auto garage that smelled of coffee and pine cleaner. A hand-lettered sign read, "We are each other's harvest." Behind a folding table stacked with citrus crates stood Hattie Mason, broad-shouldered, 90 pounds of it hope alone, and the oldest friend Evelyn had left in the county. "Girl, what mess have you stepped in?" Hattie exclaimed, seeing the bruised fatigue in Evelyn's eyes. She hurried around the table and enveloped her in an embrace that smelled of nutmeg and cedar. The hug cracked, something hardened inside Evelyn, and she clung for 3 breaths longer than pride allowed. Words tumbled out: hospital, phone calls, forged papers, while Hattie listened, cheeks flushing from anger not at all weather cold. When the story finished, Hattie poured 2 mugs of chicory coffee and slid one across a milk crate they used as a desk. "You still got fire, Eve, I can smell it," she said, "but you'll need proof hotter than that to melt this ice. County clerk's office opens at 9. Evelyn nodded, sipping the bitter warmth. The liquid scalded new resolve into her. "Will you come?" she asked quietly. "Try and stop me." By the time they stepped outside, sunlight glinted off the snowfields so fiercely that every surface looked forged from glass. Hattie's battered pickup bucked over ruts toward town, each jolt reminding Evelyn that pain was merely the body's growl to keep the spirit awake. They parked beside the stone courthouse, whose clock tower sliced clear sky with winter certainty. Inside the records room, dust motes waltzed through shafts of light while an old radiator clanged in protest at the morning cold. Behind a high counter sat Joanna Reyes, head librarian on weekdays, part-time clerk, when budgets tightened. She recognized Evelyn at once, eyebrows lifting in alarm and welcome. After hurried greetings, Joanna guided them through musty aisles of filing cabinets until they reached the real estate records terminal. Within minutes, Evelyn's worst fears blinked on the screen in digital bureaucratic clarity. Quit claim deed grantor, Evelyn Whitaker, by POA Travis. Whitaker, grantee, Travis Whitaker. Effective date, 1 week prior to her fall. Beneath that, a PDF scan of the notarized medical affidavit declaring her unable to manage personal or financial matters due to cognitive decline, consistent with advanced Alzheimer's. The affidavit carried Dr. Hollister's signature, yet her last appointment with him had been a routine blood pressure check, nothing more. Hattie swore under her breath, soft enough to avoid echo. Joanna printed copies, her mouth a tight line. "This is fraud, Evelyn." Her librarian's voice, usually hushed, now vibrated with righteousness. "We can challenge it, but you'll need a lawyer yesterday." And a second medical opinion to torpedo that affidavit. Evelyn pressed trembling fingers to the dog tag. The ridges steadied her. "Then that's the path," she said. She tucked the papers into her purse, each sheet a blunt shard of betrayal and the first bricks in her case. Outside the courthouse, the sun climbed higher, bright enough that even footprints began to sparkle like veins of quartz. For the first time since the porch door slammed, Evelyn felt the ground beneath her shift from sinking sand to something frozen and firm. She and Hattie climbed back into the pickup, engine coughing to life, and turned toward the strip mall law office of Alan Nichols, a former public defender known in 3 counties for fighting dirty deeds with clean paperwork. As the truck rumbled forward, Evelyn allowed herself one backward glance at the courthouse clock. The minute hand inched upward, marking time not as her enemy now, but as an ally. Every second another chance to correct the ledger of truth. And she whispered into the rattling cab, barely louder than the heater fan, "Remember who we are." Hattie nodded, gripping the wheel as if the phrase were reins guiding 2 stubborn mares through drifts towards daylight. Alan Nichols's reception area smelled of burnt coffee and printer toner, a cocktail Evelyn associated with arguments won by persistence rather than polish. The lawyer himself, late 40s, collar half-ironed, emerged from a back room still chewing a mint. Hattie made introductions, and within minutes they sat around a scarred oak table covered in manila folders. Evelyn laid out her photocopies like playing cards in a high-stakes hand. Nichols adjusted rimless glasses. Power of attorney filed with a medical affidavit, he muttered, scanning. Doctor's license number checks, but I'll bet $10 the signature's forged or obtained under false pretenses. We'll subpoena the original test results, if they exist. He peeked over the page. First step, independent cognitive assessment. Second, petition to void the deed on grounds of fraud and elder exploitation. Evelyn's stomach tightened. She dreaded the implication that she must prove her sanity, yet she understood the game board. When your opponent fought with lies, truth required formal armor. She agreed to schedule an evaluation with Dr. Rana, a neurologist in Great Falls whose reputation Nichols trusted. Third, Nichols continued, tapping a pen on the desk, temporary restraining order to keep Travis from liquidating assets. We'll file today. Each legal term felt simultaneously alien and empowering, like slipping into a borrowed coat that nonetheless fit in the shoulders. Still, fear gnawed. What if doctors found legitimate decline? She was 71 after all. Memory skipped tracks sometimes. Nichols seemed to read the worry and softened his tone. You're fighting for your rights, Miss Whitaker, not for perfection. Courts look at capability in big strokes, finances, self-care, awareness. I can already tell you tick those boxes. Hattie reached across and squeezed Evelyn's forearm. The warmth of that touch settled in her bones like broth after a winter funeral. She straightened. They spent 2 hours drafting affidavits. Nichols asked detailed questions. Could she list her medications? Yes. Recall last year's tax amount? $753 to state, $2,090 federal. Describe snowpack depth on the roof. 17 inches after last month's blizzard, Travis never shoveled. Finally, Nichols slid a blue ink pen toward her with the petition face up. Time to sign. The pen felt heavier than steel, ink barrel thrumming with consequence. Evelyn hesitated a breath. Signing meant declaring formal war on her only child. Somewhere inside, an old lullaby voice pleaded, "Don't hurt him. He was once your baby." But the echo of the chain sliding home answered, "He already hurt you. He counts on your silence." She pressed nib to paper. Her hand shook, but the signature flowed, a looping E that Marvin used to trace on her palm during lazy porch evenings. When she lifted the pen, the name glowed wet before soaking into fiber, a line drawn. Nichols gathered the forms. County clerk's office closes at 4. We'll submit before then. Expect pushback. He glanced at Hattie, then back to Evelyn. You have a place to stay? Motel. He frowned. Better you lodge somewhere safer. Travis could claim you're unfit based on living conditions. That remark pricked pride. I'll find better. She thought of the quilt still packed in her suitcase, the one Marvin and she pieced during lean winter nights. Safe enough for sanity. Hattie cleared her throat. My spare bedroom's empty. Eve stays with me. She said it flat. Daring argument. Evelyn opened her mouth to protest, then closed it. Pride could not pay rent, and friendship's mercy asked only acceptance. She nodded. Thank you. By the time they left the office, afternoon sun had fled behind steel clouds. The wind sharpened, slicing drifts into ghostly plumes across Main Street. Walking toward Hattie's truck, Evelyn gripped her cane, each step sending a decision up through marrow. Forward, always forward. She felt small beneath the endless Montana sky, yet also more solid than the grain silos towering nearby. Those silos stood to store harvest. She stood to store truth. They stopped at the motel to collect her belongings. 1 suitcase, 1 shoebox of photographs, and the quilt. Room 12 already felt like exhaled breath. Warm moment gone. Door closed. In the truck cab, Evelyn cradled the quilt on her lap. Finger by finger, she traced a square of navy calico stitched with gold thread, Marvin's favorite remnant from an old work shirt. She pictured laying this quilt on Hattie's guest bed tonight, a portable geography of belonging. As they pulled into Hattie's driveway, a modest craftsman tucked behind spruce trees, Evelyn noticed fresh tire tracks beside the curb. Not Hattie's. Her pulse quickened, but no vehicle remained. Probably delivery, she told herself, though unease burrowed deep as snow melt under crust. Inside, Hattie brewed thyme tea. Steam curled up. drawing out breath Evelyn hadn't noticed she held. Cups clinked. Evening news murmured from a radio on low volume. Grain prices down. Highway closures east of Havre. A brief mention of increased elder fraud cases statewide. Evelyn's lip twitched at the dark irony. The universe seemed to underscore her fight in every headline. When they finished supper, corn chowder thick as wet wool, they spread paperwork across the dining table, affidavits, upcoming medical appointments, phone numbers for state ombudsman offices. Hattie produced a yellow legal pad and a jar of river stones. "Marvin taught you gratitude stones," she said, eyes twinkling. "Tonight we use them for evidence. Each fact we gather, we place one stone. At the end, jar shows truth's weight." Evelyn's throat tightened. She lifted the first stone, a smooth gray oval, and set it in the jar. "Quitclaim deed," she said. A second stone, forged affidavit. Third, power of attorney. The clink of rock on glass echoed like small gavel strokes, solemn yet rhythmic, and Evelyn felt something shift. The jar was half-inch filled, but already heavy in her hand. She imagined the sound it would make once full, thunder her son could not ignore. Night deepened, and Hattie retired upstairs. Evelyn remained, studying snow swirl outside the kitchen window. Headlights occasionally skimmed past on the county road, smearing white light across frosted glass like ghosts hunting entry. One truck slowed, idled, then crawled on. Evelyn's pulse kicked. Paranoia, she told herself. Yet instinct cautioned Travis might push back harder and sooner than anyone guessed. She pulled the quilt around her shoulders and whispered into the silent house, "Lord, guard our doors." The prayer melted into the hiss of the furnace, comforting but unresolved, like a melody missing its final chord. Upstairs, guest room smelled of cedar chests and ironing starch. Evelyn laid the quilt, smoothed the wrinkles, and settled onto the mattress. Pain pills dulled hip ache, fatigue weighed eyelids, but sleep waited at the threshold, withheld until she confronted the looming unknown. Would proving her own competence lose her the son she once knew for good? Could justice bloom without salting the soil of love beyond rebirth? She drifted into uneasy dreams of wheat fields frozen mid-sway, each stalk sheathed in ice. When sunlight finally bled around curtains, she woke with one clear answer: some harvests must be lost to save the land. Morning brought a dim pearl sky, the kind that promised more snow by noon. Over oatmeal and chokecherry jam, Evelyn rehearsed with Hattie the questions Dr. Rana might pose. Orientation, recall, abstract reasoning. Hattie drilled her like a coach. Serial, sevens, 93, 86, 79, 72. Presidents backward, Biden, Trump, Obama, Bush Jr., Clinton, Bush Sr. Each correct answer stacked another stone in the jar. Confidence grew, though fear still nipped at its heels like coyotes around a calf. At 10, they set out for Great Falls, 2 hours southwest, Nichols's paralegal riding shotgun to shepherd paperwork. The Highline Highway shimmered under sun. Yesterday's drifts plowed into banks taller than a man. As miles slipped past, Evelyn watched landscape unscroll. Barbed wire fences half submerged, cottonwoods hunched like old men against wind, distant buttes etched sharp as promises. Montana never lied about hardship. It carved truth into stone and expected its people to read. Today she felt ready. Dr. Rana's clinic occupied a renovated warehouse, airy and bright. The neurologist, an attentive woman with kind brown eyes, led Evelyn through batteries of tests. Some were puzzles on tablets, others simple conversation. Mid-exam, Dr. Rana asked Evelyn to draw a clock showing 10 after 11. Evelyn sketched the circle, placed numerals, then hesitated. Minute hand or hour shorter? She quivered, panic pricking sweat. 10 after, she reminded herself, picturing Marvin winding the antique kitchen clock Sundays before church. She drew hands, little past the 2, big on the 3. 11:10, she said. Dr. Rana nodded, inscrutable. Blood work, reflex taps, memory lists followed. When finished, Dr. Rana escorted her to a consult room and offered water while results compiled. Evelyn clutched the cup, heart chugging. The doctor returned with a printout and gentle smile. Cognitive function within normal age ranges, she said. No clinical evidence of dementia. Relief crashed like thaw flood through Evelyn's veins. She nearly laughed from the dizzy lightness, but tears leapt first. Hattie squeezed her hand so tight bones kissed. Dr. Rana promised a formal report by day's end and volunteered to testify if necessary. She'd seen similar fraud before. Prosecutors took it seriously. Driving back, the truck seemed lighter on the road, its tires singing against wet asphalt. Yet Evelyn's mind raced ahead, foreseeing Travis's counterpunches. Claiming undue influence, fabricating new lies. She must shore up community allies before rumors spread. She asked Hattie to drop her at the public library. Inside, Joanna waved her into a reading room where several seniors attended a genealogy workshop. Evelyn took the lectern when class ended and, voice steady, relayed a trimmed version of her ordeal, naming no names yet, pointing to the rising tide of elder exploitation. Heads nodded, murmurs swelled. By the time she finished, 6 neighbors volunteered affidavits of her competence, 3 offered guest cottages if she needed refuge, and the workshop leader promised to circulate information at church circle meetings. Truth, once spoken, seeded itself like prairie grass, tough, spreading, impossible to uproot. Evening settled with pale gold twilight. Back at Hattie's, they found an envelope taped to the front door. No stamp, no return address, just Evelyn's name and Travis's handwriting. Heart hammering, she peeled it open. Inside lay a single sheet. Withdraw the petition. We can talk. Below, a photocopy of an old prom photo. Travis at 17, arm around her, both laughing under tissue paper streamers, manipulation, nostalgia as bribe. Evelyn's throat closed, grief flickering. She traced the photo's edge, then placed it face down on the entry table. She took a smooth riverstone from Hattie's jar and set it atop the petition copy. Another piece of evidence, she whispered. Proof he still thinks my love is a leash. The stone clinked, jar now half full, weighty enough that lifting it required 2 hands. Late that night, Evelyn sat beneath the quilt, writing in a spiral notebook Nichols had provided for chronological notes. Every sentence felt like stitching a new patch in the fabric of her resolve. Date, time, action, witness. She logged them all. When wrist cramped, she rested and listened, wind scraping spruce needles against the siding, furnace whooshing, distant coyote call. Life went on outside this war, indifferent yet steady. She ended with a single line underlined twice. Court filing 9 a.m. Monday. Then closed the notebook, slid it under her pillow like a talisman, and lay back. Sleep came easier. In her dream, she walked across a frozen lake towards dawn. Beneath the ice glowed the quilt's gold threads, guiding her footsteps. Each step cracked surface, but water did not rush in. Instead, light poured upward, melting fear into bright pools. She woke at first blush of morning with the taste of copper gone, replaced by clean mountain air drifting through an open window Hattie must have cracked to let night spirits exit. Evelyn inhaled the cold and smiled. Chapter 2. Of her battle it ended not in defeat or resignation, but in gathering forces. Monday promised the first courtroom skirmish, but tonight she felt the strange hush before planting. Soil still frosted, yet seeds warm in her pocket waiting. Evelyn Whitaker sat in Alan Nichols' office the following Monday at 9:02 a.m., the fluorescent lights buzzing like wasps over damp spring earth. The petition had been filed at dawn, stamped by a clerk still yawning into her thermos. Now, copies bearing the county seal lay between lawyer and client like freshly cast bullets. Petition to vacate fraudulent power of attorney, motion for temporary injunction, request for immediate hearing. Nichols tapped the edge of the top sheet. Judge Eberhardt set an initial conference 10 days out, he said. That's fast. Means he smells something off 10 days. Evelyn felt both gratitude and dread settle into her bones. 10 days to gather witnesses, 10 days to brace for what her son might unleash. She pictured Travis pacing their living room, his living room now, laptop glowing with spreadsheets of debt, Yvette hissing strategies like a snake beside him. The thought chilled her more than the wind outside. Nichols slid a final document across. You'll need to sign this agreement for Dr. Marks, court-appointed psychiatrist, to evaluate you. Standard whenever cognitive fraud is alleged. Evelyn's stomach tightened. She had passed doctor. Rana's neurological tests with steady scores, but psyche evaluations felt like wandering through someone else's mirror maze. Every reflection a question. Are you sane enough to walk this hall? Remember these numbers? Trust your own son? She signed anyway. Pen strokes confident. Truth stands up to any flashlight, she murmured, echoing Marvin's old workshop motto. On their way out, Nichols paused. Expect pushback. They'll try to paint you unstable. Keep records, avoid confrontations, and most important, rest. Evelyn almost laughed. Rest felt like a foreign country. Yet she nodded, clutching her purse where the river stone jar now rode beside dog tag and folded quilt scrap, a noisy talisman of evidence each time she walked. The week unfolded as if the sky itself conspired to test her resolve. On Tuesday, a certified letter arrived bearing the logo of First Frontier Bank. Inside, legal-sounding sentences demanded Evelyn relinquish any remaining authority over joint accounts within 48 hours. The envelope stank of Travis's desperation. He had never been subtle with templates. Nichols assured her the notice was toothless, but the audacity punched her lungs empty. Wednesday night, Hattie's dog Rufus erupted in ferocious barking. From the guest room window, Evelyn glimpsed headlights idling at the curb, engine rumbling. A camera flash stuttered through the sleet, once, twice, then tires squealed away. Paranoia? Number. Hattie found fresh footprints. Evelyn added a stone to the jar, label, stalking attempt. By Thursday dawn, newspapers across northern Montana ran a quarter-page advertorial. Protect our elders from scams even family can deceive. Joanna had drafted it, listing hotline numbers and citing a recent local case. Evelyn's name appeared nowhere, yet everyone seemed to know. At the feed store, 2 ranchers tipped their caps. At church, Pastor Delaney pressed her palm and whispered, "God fights for the widow." Support warmed her cheeks, but each new ally also carved loneliness deeper. The village rallied because a son betrayed. That afternoon, she and Hattie drove to Great Falls again for Dr. Joel Marks's evaluation. The psychiatrist's office overlooked the Missouri River, chunks of thaw ice drifting like white rafts toward prairie. Inside, Dr. Marks's voice was low, questions meticulous. What month? What town were you born? Would you push a man off a bridge if it saved 5 children on the tracks? Evelyn answered with calm logic, sprinkling humor when truth allowed. At session's end, Doctor. Marks closed her file and smiled. You're sharper than the average CEO I evaluate, she said. Expect my report tomorrow. Evelyn left lighter, but outside the wind snapped her coat like a sail, Montana reminding her celebration was premature. Over the dashboard radio came news of another winter storm barreling east from the Rockies due Saturday night. She pictured drifts swallowing fence posts and shuddered, not at snow but at memory. The night Travis suffered frostbite at age 8 because he snuck out to prove courage. She had tended his blistered fingers until dawn. Motherhood did not switch off with a notary stamp. Friday delivered Dr. Marks's report. Capable, oriented, exhibits resilience. Nichols whooped loud enough to startle his receptionist. The document alone could gut Travis's case. Still, Evelyn added the printout into her jar, stone clinking on stone until the glass sang. That evening she allowed herself small joy, frying trout with Hattie, humming along to BB. King as snow began to drift outside. Yet beneath conversation, dread pulsed. Monday's conference, then eventual trial, then perhaps reconciliation, or rubble. She could not script the ending. All she could do was keep stepping. Before bed, she opened her notebook and wrote, "Fear is a sled, courage is the dog's pulling." She underlined twice, closed the cover, and turned off the lamp. Saturday morning ushered in a pale sun that fooled no one. Barometer readings dropped like stones. Hattie busied herself stocking firewood. Evelyn, cane in hand, insisted on helping, but each log twinged her hip, reminding her that healing bones had limits even grit could not erase. By noon clouds thickened, sky bruised charcoal, and wind carried a hum like distant cattle lowing. Rufus paced the porch, hackles high. Inside, Evelyn supervised storm prep. Fill bathtubs, charge phones, stack blankets. Every task anchored her to reality, staving off thought of Travis's counters. Nichols texted updates. Yvette had hired a private investigator likely to capture erratic behavior. Evelyn snorted, let them film her folding laundry, and sanity never looked so domestic. By dusk, the storm arrived in full voice. Snow whirled sideways, clinging to windows in dune-like swaths. Power flickered twice, then steadied. Hattie lit kerosene lamps anyway. Glass chimneys glowed amber, shadows waltzing along beadboard walls. They played gin rummy at the kitchen table, Rufus snoring beneath. Outside, wind moaned around gutters like a morning choir. At 9:30, a brittle crack split the night, wood fracturing under weight, Rufus leapt barking. Hattie snatched a flashlight, Evelyn her cane, and they hurried to the mudroom door. Through swirling snow, the beam found the old gambrel shed at the property line. Its roof sagged, then collapsed inward, sending a geyser of powder skyward. The sound echoed across white fields like a tree falling in an empty forest, loud only to those who loved the land. Evelyn felt the vibration in her sternum. Another relic gone, another memory smashed by forces larger than human will. Yet she also sensed metaphor's hand, shed as symbol of what must be raised before something safer could rise. Sometimes structures built to shelter become burdened under too much snow. They could do nothing until daylight. Back inside, Hattie poured cocoa thick as wet soil. Evelyn cradled the mug, watching chocolate eddy. "I'm afraid," she admitted, voice barely above stove hiss, "not of court. Of losing Travis forever." Hattie's eyes softened. "Sometimes we lose 'em to save 'em, honey." Wind slammed a shutter. Evelyn thought of Travis's prom photo, now pinned to Nichols' file as evidence of manipulation. She remembered ironing his tuck shirt, pressing each crease sharper than winter's horizon, whispering prayers into the cotton that he'd walk a straight path. Was that mother's hope now moldering like the shed? Or could discipline itself be a tributary that led back to river? "I can't rescue him," she said at last, "but I can show him water and pray he stops drowning." Hattie nodded. "And if he keeps pulling others under, you cut the rope." Evelyn blinked tears into steam, then set the mug down. She picked up a river stone, smallest of the jar, and turned it over in her palm. "Love without boundaries breeds thieves," she inscribed in her mind, then placed the stone atop the pile. The jar reached its lip. Evidence and epiphany mingled. They slept fitfully. Evelyn on the couch near the stove for warmth, Hattie upstairs. Sleet rattled windows, but the house held. Near dawn, silence fell, the eerie hush after a blizzard's rage. Evelyn rose, joints aching, and parted the curtain. The world lay buried in alabaster peace, drifts sculpted into frozen waves cresting hip-high. Sunlight hit crystalline surfaces, and the yard exploded into diamonds. The collapsed shed looked almost beautiful, a white-robed ruin. Destruction, she noted, can sparkle given the right light. After breakfast, they shoveled a path to the truck. Rufus bounded, half swimming, half leaping through powder. When they reached the shed, Evelyn stepped closer. Among splintered beams protruded a rusted horseshoe. She recognized it at once. Marvin had nailed it above the barn door the summer Travis turned 13, right side up to hold luck. Now it lay inverted, snow packed in its curve. She bent pain-needling hip and lifted it free. "Horseshoe, still good metal," Hattie remarked. "Luck doesn't rust," Evelyn answered. She brushed snow, righted the arc, and slipped it into her coat pocket. Another talisman for Monday. Back indoors, they fired emails to Nichols with storm photos, proof of conditions should Travis claim she was roaming unsafely. At noon, the county plow carved a canyon through the road. With path clear, Evelyn insisted on visiting the property assessor's office before closing to obtain certified maps of her land boundaries. Every document bolstered her fortress, stone by stone, evening again. As they reviewed witness lists, Evelyn's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Drop the suit before you regret it." Last warning, attached was a blurred photo of her through Hattie's kitchen window. The snow around Sheed glowed ghost white. Hattie cursed. Nichols forwarded the threat to sheriff's deputies requesting patrols. Evelyn, hands steady, added final stone to the evidence jar. There was no room. Pebbles overflowed onto the table. She let them fall, scattering like hard seeds. "Plant them," she whispered. Hattie smiled grimly. Sunday passed in logistics and prayer circles. That night, Evelyn ironed her court outfit, charcoal skirt, dove gray blouse, and Marvin's dog tag gleaming at the throat like a medal earned in battles of love. She slept 3 hours, waking before dawn to a sky so clear it rang. Monday, courthouse corridors reeked of old wax and new nerves. Fluorescent bulbs flickered over linoleum worn by decades of boots. Evelyn walked between Nichols and Hattie, cane tapping cadence. Opposing counsel, slick-haired Mark Ellison out of Billings, waited outside Judge Eberhardt's chambers, Yvette beside him in a coat the pink of raw salmon. Travis lingered a pace behind her, face drawn, eyes flicking everywhere but mother. Evelyn's heart punched ribs. She tasted iron, but not fear. Adrenaline. She inclined her head. "Morning, son." Travis opened his mouth. Yvette pinched his sleeve. He swallowed, voice hushed. "You're making a mistake." Nichols moved forward, but Evelyn lifted a palm. Let him speak. Travis's gaze finally met hers. Shadows ringed his eyes. Debt and sleepless guilt. Yvette said, He stopped. Words jammed. A boy caught between playground lie and principal's stare. Evelyn stepped closer. Hattie beside her like mountain granite. "You forged my mind into an illness," she said softly. "You tried to bury me alive." "Explain." He flinched. Yvette broke in. "We protected family assets. Early onset runs in your line." Her eyes were ice chips. Evelyn studied her son. Beneath stubble, his jaw trembled. Truth peaked. Terrified. Board of trade losses, second mortgage, a dozen press suits he could no longer afford. Yvette squeezed his arm. Bruised purple marks rose where manicured nails dug. He was drowning, and he chose to climb his mother like a life raft. Evelyn's throat burned, love and wrath mingling like whiskey and tea. She spoke to Travis, not Yvette. "You can still swim, baby, but you drag me again and we both sink." Decide before he answered, the clerk opened chamber doors. "Conference ready." Inside, arguments unfurled. Nichols presenting affidavits, doctor. Marks's report. Ellison waving concerns about Evelyn's delusions. Judge Eberhardt, a stoic man with snowy mustache, listened stone-faced. After 90 minutes, he ruled narrowly. Temporary injunction granted, power of attorney suspended, status hearing set in 30 days. Until then, Travis forbidden from occupancy or asset transfer. He left chambers pale as alabaster. In the hallway, media waited. 2 local stations and a county blogger. Microphones prodded. Evelyn, shielded by Nichols, offered no comment. Yet as she passed Travis, she stopped. Press lights etched his despair. She met his eyes. Not triumph, not forgiveness, just weather-worn truth. "I love you," she said quietly, "but I will not enable you." He opened his mouth, but tears choked off speech. Yvette pulled him away, heels clacking like thrown dice on marble. Cameras followed. Outside, sun blazed off courthouse stone, snow melt trickled down gutters, singing small spring hymns. Evelyn inhaled crisp air, heavier with promise than dread. Hattie pressed the full Riverstone jar into her hands. Glass caught sunlight, scattering sparks across snowbanks like seeds of fire. Evelyn raised it shoulder height, feeling its weight settle through spine to earth. Proof. She imagined planting each pebble along the frozen furrow of her life, a boundary line no fraud could cross. As they walked toward Nichols' car, wind carried distant meadowlark song, first of the season, threading through empty branches above. Evelyn smiled. The snow, honest judge of Montana, was already shrinking, revealing dark soil ready for whatever she chose to sow next. And she knew, with marrow certainty, that the harvest to come would be hers to claim no matter who tried to reap it. The courthouse clock struck 3 in the afternoon, a hollow bronze note that seemed to ripple through every office phone and fluorescent tube in Nichols' modest suite. Evelyn felt the vibration inside her teeth more than she heard it. She sat at the conference table, quilt folded over her lap, while Nichols paced a slow furrow in the carpet. "Trial set for Thursday at 9, he repeated, though they both knew. He had said it twice already, like a farmer walking fence line to be sure no post had slipped overnight. On the table, a thumb drive gleamed dark blue, Ellison's newest surprise, courier delivered with a note scrawled in Yvette's angular script. "Play me before you embarrass yourself." Nichols had scanned it for viruses, then opened the single video file. Now its paused first frame glared from his laptop. Evelyn, silhouetted at Hattie's kitchen window, hair wild, eyes wide, speaking to empty snow. Timestamp 2:11 a.m. "You ready?" Nichols asked. "Play it." Evelyn's voice felt like boot leather, weather-cracked but serviceable. He pressed spacebar. Grainy night vision footage lurched forward. Evelyn's figure swayed as though seasick. Her lips moved, but wind drowned words. A date overlay blinked 3 nights prior. A subtitle appeared, Ellison's handiwork, rendering her mutters as, "They're watching, they're in the walls, Marvin." The clip cut abruptly after 20 seconds. Nichols snorted. "Sloppy." "Splice artifacts everywhere," Hattie, leaning in the doorway, folded her arms. "Also the weather." That night we had clear sky. Listen close, hear sleet on glass. That's the December blizzard last year. Radio ran constant advisories. You could record it from any porch. Nichols nodded, eyes sharpening. Digital forensics will shred this, but it tells us their angle, paints you paranoid, unstable. He tapped the dog tag at Evelyn's throat gently. "We counter with truth." Truth weighed heavier than steel. 2 nights ago, sleeplessness had indeed driven Evelyn to the kitchen window, but she had spoken only scripture against fear, not hallucinations. Even if her words had cracked, grief sometimes made sound without sense. That was human, not dementia. "Let them play it," she said. "Let the judge see what desperation looks like." Nichols' phone buzzed. "Doctor." Mark's emailing affidavit reaffirming her competency. More stone for the jar. They spent the next hours building cross-examination trees. Hattie brewed chicory so strong it stained Mug's umber. Evening snow drifted against the window like sifted salt, but the office radiated furnace heat and purpose. At 7, Nichols locked documents in a fireproof cabinet. "Go rest," he ordered softly. "Tomorrow you need your voice." Hattie's house slept under a hush of new snow. Rufus twitched by the hearth, dream running through rabbit country. Evelyn sat at the dining room table, jar of river stones before her. Only 3 smooth pebbles remained unplaced. Space for Thursday's verdict. She touched the horseshoe on the mantel, right side up now, then moved to the front window. Headlights. A sedan idled at the curb, exhaust pluming. Evelyn's pulse kicked. She limped onto the porch before Hattie could stop her. Cold, knifed lungs. The passenger door opened. Travis stepped into lamplight, snow glittering on his coat. His face looked older than 43, worry carved deep as coolies. "Mama," he whispered. Hattie hovered in the doorway, arms rigid. Evelyn lifted a hand. "It's all right." She descended 2 steps, pain flaring. Distance between them felt like acreage. "Why are you here?" He fumbled inside coat, produced a slim folder, debt statements, red stamp notices. "I'm in over my head. Yvette's parents cut us off. Investors want repayment." Voice cracked. "If this trial goes on, I lose everything." "Please drop it. We'll sell the house, cover my loans. You'll live with us." A laugh burst from Hattie, bitter vapor on cold air. Travis flinched. Evelyn's heart lurched with instinct to shelter, to gather him like the frostbitten boy in plaid pajamas, but memory of chain-sliding home steeled her spine. "Live where?" she asked quietly. "The guest room you locked me out of?" Wind rattled porch railing. Travis's shoulders sagged. "I was scared," he confessed. Tears slipped, freezing before falling. "I thought you'd fade like Grandma did and I'd be left with nothing but bills." Yvette said, Evelyn repeated. The phrase cut like thin ice beneath weight. She reached inside pocket, removed the inverted horseshoe. "I nailed this lucky iron the day you graduated, remember?" She placed it in his palm. "Luck is earned. So is mercy." He stared at the curve, snow filling its hollow. "You won't help?" "I will not lie for you," she answered. "Thursday tells truth. After that, we'll see what's left." Lights glowed behind Hattie, beckoning warmth. Evelyn turned. Travis remained on the walk, a figure carved from dusk. When she reached the door, he called, "I love you, Mama." Evelyn paused, chest tight. "Then learn what love costs," she said, stepping inside. Hattie locked the latch. Through the window, they watched headlights retreat, tail lights dimming like embers. Rufus whined, sensing heartbreak. Evelyn set the horseshoe on the table, its weight cold. One stone remained in her hand. She rolled it across knuckles, then whispered, "For the price of fear," and let it fall into the jar. Only 2 stones left for morning. Thursday dawned sharp and blue, powder snow sparkling under sun like confession beneath interrogation lamp. Outside the courthouse, a cameraman's breath fogged his lens. Bloggers hunched over thermoses. One held a sign, #StandWithEvelyn. Nichols parked by the steps. Hattie helped Evelyn from the car, quilt folded over her arm like regimental colors. Inside courtroom, 3 oak benches creaked with townsfolk, ranchers in shearling, librarians in cardigans, a few plainclothes deputies. Yvette sat front right, coral lipstick precise as scalpel, her lawyer Ellison rifling notes. Travis, pale, kept eyes on floor. Judge Eberhardt entered, all rose. Gavel sounded like axe to frozen stump. Opening statements rippled across paneled walls. Ellison painted a portrait of filial concern. Early cognitive decline, financial chaos if unmanaged, act of love, not greed. Nichols rose, slow and deliberate. "This case is not about memory loss," he intoned. "It is about memory theft." He cited affidavits, played the doctored window video on screen, then paused at Sleet soundtrack. The Weather Bureau clerk testified next. No precipitation that night. Murmurs buzzed like hornets. Ellison called doctor. Hollister. Salt and pepper beard quivering. Under oath, Nichols unveiled pharmacy receipts showing Hollister's gambling debts. Pressure mounted. Sweat darkened the doctor's collar. Nichols slid the forged affidavit across, signature misaligned. "Did you write these words?" Yes, but were you in the hospital room? Did you perform cognitive exams? No. Who asked you to sign? Silence. Judge's eyebrow arched. Hollister's gaze darted to Yvette, whose manicure tightened on purse strap. He swallowed. "Mrs. Whitaker, the younger Mrs. Whitaker," he muttered. Gasps sprouted, phones lifted for stealth photos. Nichols rested. "No more questions." Ellison declined recross. Sweat sheened. Yvette whispered fiercely to him. He shook head. Their line had ruptured. Lunch recess. Evelyn sipped broth in witness room, hands trembling. Nichols smiled small. "House already yours in spirit." Afternoon session brought Dr. Marks, methodical and unimpeachable. She summarized tests. Concluded, Mrs. Whitaker demonstrates executive functioning equal or superior to normative 71-year-old cohort. She smiled at Evelyn. Jury, 7 community volunteers smiled back. Finally, Evelyn took the stand. Oath recited, she sat straighter than pain allowed, quilt folded across knees. Nichols guided gently. Upbringing in Louisiana, nursing career, marriage, the house she and Marvin built with milled pine they hewed themselves. Voice did not waver until he asked, "Why fight?" She touched dog tag. "Because memory is land," she said, voice soft but carrying. "My son tried to fence it off with lies. I plow too deep to let weeds claim what feed my grandchildren." Benches sniffled. Ellison approached, eyes steeled. "Mrs. Whitaker, isn't it true you've experienced confusion recently? For instance, speaking to your late husband at night?" Nichols objected, asked and answered. Judge sustained, yet Evelyn responded anyway, gaze calm. "Talking to dead loved ones isn't confusion, sir." It's prayer, laughter rippled, even Judge's mouth twitched, closing arguments brief, jury left, Judge recessed to chambers. Nichols exhaled. "Even if jury wobbles, Judge can void deed on fraud alone," he whispered. 40 minutes later, verdict returned. Power of attorney fraudulent, deed voided, assets restored. Judge ordered investigation into conspiracy, froze Travis and Yvette's accounts, referred Dr. Hollister to medical board. Gavel fell. Tears followed Evelyn's, Hattie's, half the galleries. But joy blurred with ache. Travis slumped, face shattered. Yvette stormed out, heels stabbing corridor. Cameras surged, deputies parted them, outside, wind gusted, but sun shone fierce. Reporters pressed in. Nichols shielded Evelyn. She offered a single sentence to microphones. "Truth keeps the roof up." Then strode down steps, quilt trailing like banner of survivors. At foot of stairs, Travis waited, cheeks blotched. "It's all gone," he rasped. "Yvette, the investors, everything." Pain speared her chest, yet strength held. She placed her palm on his cheek. "Not gone, just weighed true." She pressed dog tag into his hand. "Remember who you are." Then turned, Hattie at her side, leaving cameras to capture sun cradling steel discs, snow glittering like shards of past unmade. Evening light stretched amber across Hattie's kitchen when Nichols arrived carrying a banker's box. "Clerk released certified deed," he announced. "Property back in your name, free and clear." He set the box on table. Papers thumped like hymn book chorus. Evelyn stared a long moment, then slid it aside. "I'm selling," she said. Nichols blinked. "Market strong, sure. Where'll you live?" Evelyn unfolded the quilt, smoothing navy squares. "House will go to Morning Star Haven, the elder shelter renovating the old Lutheran manse." Hattie's grin erupted. "Girl, you mean it?" Evelyn nodded. "Roof should cover more than one soul." She lifted the jar of stones, now overflowing. One by one she poured them onto the quilt, patterning a river from darkest gray to pale alabaster. "These are the lies we dug up," she said. "Tomorrow we return them to Milk River, let water carry weight away." Hattie fetched 2 mason jars, filling them with 3 stones each. "Keeps them. Reminder." She handed one to Nichols, one to Evelyn. Inside hers lay the smallest pebble, the price of fear rattling gentle when she shook. Knock at door. Rufus barked once, tail uncertain. Travis stood on porch, no car in sight, eyes red-rimmed, pockets empty. "I'm walking," he explained. "Loan office took the Chevy." He held up dog tag. "I want to give this back." Evelyn stepped outside, closing door behind. Sun dipped toward buttes, sky watercolored mauve. "Tag's yours now," she said. "Wait teaches." He bowed head, tears dropping, vanishing on melted snow. "I don't know how to start over." "Plant," she answered simply, pointing at thawing garden beds along fence. Shoots of crocus-pierced crust, reckless for early bloom. "Break ground, sow truth. Come spring, we'll see what grows." Travis nodded, a boy again, then walked the county road until twilight swallowed him. Inside, Evelyn washed 2 teacups. Hattie lit a lamp, its glow pooling on quilted river. Nichols raised jar like toast. The storm was past, roof intact. Tomorrow they would cross fields to scatter stones in sunlit water, laughter skipping ahead like flat rocks. Evelyn lowered herself into armchair. Pain lapped, but peace rose higher. Snowmelt trickled outside, a faint applause from Earth itself. She closed eyes, breathed time-scented air, and whispered to Marvin's memory, "Plows at the edge, love." "Soil's ready." Her heart answered with steady rhythm, a metronome marking time not to battle but to sow. Evelyn Whitaker stood alone in what used to be her bedroom, dawn light spilling across bare plank floors the color of honey left too long in the jar. Cardboard boxes towered like miniature grain elevators against the wall, each labeled in her hand. Linens, kitchen, Marvin's tools, donation. The sharp odor of packing tape mingled with the faint sweetness of cedar that had lived in this house since Marvin hammered the first joist 35 springs ago. She drew in that scent one last time, let it settle behind her ribs, and exhaled. Estate agents said the sale would close tomorrow. Cash buyers from Seattle, remote workers chasing a big sky dream were already measuring for skylights. Evelyn felt no resentment. Roofs were only borrowed from time. What mattered was where the proceeds would land. Morningstar Haven, account number already waiting. She traced an imaginary river from house to haven, dollars flowing like runoff after thaw, and felt a pulse of purpose beat steadier than the ache in her mending hip. She eased onto the edge of the mattress, a lone piece of furniture yet unclaimed, and unfolded her notebook. Last night she had written a list titled "Things to Keep That Cost Nothing." Crocus bulbs lifted from the garden, the whistle Marvin carved from choke cherry, one river stone, fear redeemed, the horseshoe now polished and upright. She added a final line, "The smell of wheat when wind turns warm. Some memories fit any suitcase." Downstairs footsteps creaked. Hattie and 2 teenage volunteers from church, Grace and Micah, carrying empty milk crates. Rufus trotted behind, nails clicking. "Morning, Miss Eve," Grace called from the hall, voice buoyant as March sun. "We're ready for the pantry boxes." "Coming," Evelyn answered. She rose, tested her cane, and swung the quilt over her shoulders like a general donning colors for a final march. In the hallway mirror, the quilt's navy and gold patches shimmered, each square holding an echo of laughter or lullaby. She touched one corner, Marvin's old workshirt fabric, and whispered, "We're almost there, love." In the kitchen, light poured through south-facing windows onto counters scrubbed bare. Hattie was labeling a jar of choke cherry jam for Haven Kitchen opening day. Grace and Micah wrestled with cast-iron skillets heavy enough to bruise the earth. Evelyn guided them gently. "Take the Dutch oven, too. Soup tastes kinder in something seasoned by years," she said. Micah grinned, hefting the pot like a trophy. Outside, flatbed trucks idled in the drive. Community volunteers, farmers, librarians, even Deputy Sandoval had come to ferry loads to the old Lutheran manse downtown, now reborn under scaffolding and fresh primer. Snow remained only in shaded gullies. Everywhere else, meltwater chuckled in culverts, promising green. When the last box slid onto the truck bed, Evelyn lingered in the doorway. She ran her palm along the jam, feeling the tiny notch where Travis at 9 had carved his initials before fessing up in tears. She traced the letters once, forgave them again, and stepped away. Hattie locked up behind her, key ring rattling like sleigh bells, then placed the house key in a plain envelope addressed to the Seattle buyers. She handed it to Evelyn. "You do the honors." Evelyn tucked the envelope into her coat. "This house carried me," she murmured, "but it's time I learned the feel of lighter boots." They drove convoy style, trucks rumbling over county asphalt that smelled of sun-struck tar. In her rear view, the house grew smaller, then slipped behind a rise of cottonwoods, leaving only sky. Sky was enough. Downtown scaffolds climbed the manse facade like wooden vines. Painters in white coveralls waved brushes in greeting. The foreman, Del Turner, a retired Marine with sawdust in his beard, met them at the curb. "Got your kitchen goods?" he asked. When Evelyn nodded, he winked. "Good." "Stove's hooked to gas line this morning. Gonna christen it with Whitaker cornbread or we'll strike." Inside, the air smelled of new drywall and lemon oil, but stained glass windows still filtered afternoon sun into motes of ruby and sapphire. Evelyn directed boxes to their rooms, linens to second-floor dorm, skillets to communal kitchen, her late husband's hand-routed coat rack to the foyer where incoming residents would hang winter scarves. Each placement felt like setting stones in a riverbed, redirecting currents toward a refuge. By dusk, the trucks emptied. Volunteers dispersed, promising to return Saturday for the official ribbon cutting. Evelyn remained in the chapel-turned reading room, quilt draped across her shoulders, watching sunbeams crawl high walls until they faded. Silence settled, rich and unafraid. She sighed, a sound half ache, half relief. For the first time since a chain slid shut against her, she felt not locked out, but opened. Hattie entered quietly. "Home's ready," she said. Evelyn turned, eyes damp, and answered, "So am I." A single lamp illuminated the foyer as they left. The coat rack gleamed, walnut polished to amber. Marvin's craftsmanship would now cradle other people's winters, keep them from dropping to cold floor. She shut the door, heart echoing wood's final click. Outside, stars iced the sky. She tipped her face upward, inhaled the dark like good coffee, and thought, the roof is gone, but the heavens remain. The drive back to Hattie's was quiet. Rufus dozed on the seat, paws twitching. Evelyn reached into her pocket, touched the horseshoe's curve. No house, no deed, yet luck, earned, not rusted, felt warm. She slept dreamless that night, as though her mind finally trusted the walls around her not to vanish. Saturday dawned crisp, but mercifully windless. Sky a pale canvas waiting for the bright strokes of community. Evelyn rode shotgun in Hattie's pickup, Riverstone jar clinking faintly in a tote at her feet. She wore the charcoal skirt that had weathered court and a new blouse the color of prairie sage, gift from Grace sewn on her mother's machine. A morning lark whistle trilled through cracked windows. Rufus, head between seats, whined approval. They arrived to find Morning Star Haven blooming with activity. Banners stitched by the church quilting circle flapped over the portico. Welcome home. Folding tables groaned beneath pies, chili, fry bread. Children chalked sunbursts on the walkway. Joanna stood by a pop-up library cart giving away large print novels. Deputy Sandoval directed parking, badge shining like truth under May sun. Inside, wide corridors smelled of citrus polish and bread baking. Marvin's coat rack bore a dozen hats already, wool cloches, a Stetson, one neon baseball cap reading, "Senior, not sorry." Evelyn's laugh rolled down the hall. Just past 11, the ribbon ceremony gathered in the garden courtyard where crocus and early iris nodded purple heads. Del Turner handed Evelyn gold shears. As townsfolk fell hush, she spotted a familiar figure near the back. Travis in flannel, tool belt, sawdust streaking his sleeves. Her heart jolted, but she said nothing. Pastor Delaney offered a short prayer. For roofs that do not leak and hearts that do not lock. Applause followed. Evelyn raised the shears, voice carrying, "May every nail driven here fasten hope." She cut. Ribbon fluttered, a strip of sunrise falling, tours commenced. Evelyn led a group through the east wing, pointing out safety rails, reading lamps, memory boxes outside each door where residents could display a photo or verse that told their story. She paused at one room whose box held only a handwritten note, "Still choosing." She smiled. In the kitchen, steam-clouded windows. Grace stirred chili while Micah plated cornbread baked in Marvin's Dutch oven. The scent, corn and iron and caramelizing crust, hugged Evelyn like the quilt ever did. She thanked the teens, then slipped out a side door to breathe. In the courtyard, Travis knelt fixing a loose picket. He looked up, hammer still in hand, eyes wary. "Volunteer shift," he said stiffly. Del needed help. Evelyn walked closer, cane tapping stone. For a moment, neither spoke. Wind shifted, lilac hinted bloom. She noticed Travis's cheeks chapped, nails rimmed with honest dirt. The lines of greed had eased, replaced by fatigue laced with humility. "How much do you owe?" she asked. He exhaled, shoulders sagging. "More than the house was worth." Investors pulled capital, wherein the whole 6 digits. Yvette filed for divorce. His voice cracked on the last word. Evelyn absorbed that quietly. Pain pricked, maternal, inevitable, yet a steadier compass guided her now. "Debts can be repaid," she said. "Truth can't be. Start with the first nail. She pointed to the picket. He swallowed, nodded. I got a job framing houses in Chinook. Union wages. I'll send installments. To Haven. I know proceeds are earmarked for the shelter. Her chest tightened. A sprout pushing through frost. I believe you, she said, and surprised herself that it was true. She extended her palm. He hesitated, then placed the dog tag into her hand. The metal was warm from his pocket. She curled fingers, felt the engraved letters to their familiar edges. Keep it, she decided, pressing it back. You need the reminder more than I do. Tears glossed his lashes, but he smiled crooked, the way he did at 6 when he cracked her teacup and tried gluing it back. Thank you, Mama. She touched his cheek, brief, blessing light, then turned as Hattie waved from the patio. Lunch was ready. Travis fell into step, hammer dangling, for now that was enough. Meals were served under sunlit pergolas, laughter flitting like sparrows between tables. Residents, first 6 of 20 slots, arrived mid-afternoon, some leaning on walkers, others pushing suitcases decorated with State Fair stickers. Evelyn greeted each by name, handing out tiny sachets of dried lavender from her old garden. They inhaled, shoulders dropping. As dust stretched, shadows across lawn, musicians unfurled fiddles and a stand-up bass. Waltz strains mingled with the scent of lilac buds. Evelyn sat with Dr. Marks and Joanna, sipping sweet tea. Travis joined Micah repairing a squeaky gate hinge. Hattie twirled a widower named Clarence in slow circles, Rufus barking an offbeat yip. Evelyn tilted her face to the first stars. The sky above Montana looked bigger tonight, not because anything changed, but because her chest no longer cramped with what-ifs. She thought of seeds lying hidden beneath thawed soil, patient. Some would sprout, some would not. The farmer's job was simply to plant. 12 months passed, measured by crocus rise, wheat tasseled, wheat cut, and the slow turning of a quilt frame under Evelyn's hands. She now lived in Hattie's refurbished carriage house studio, rent in the form of stories and soup. Morningstar Haven thrived. 14 residents, community garden heavy with zucchini, reading room chairs polished smooth by good use. Evelyn taught a Tuesday quilting circle there, the rustle of fabric mirroring river water she still visited to skim stones. On a June morning, she wheeled a cart of lemonade onto the Haven veranda. Sunlight dazzled, magnifying the laughter of residents playing dominoes. The old Lindman twins argued numbers. Miss Ardelia hummed gospel. Evelyn paused to watch a swallow swoop under the eaves. Its wings caught light like scissors snipping cloth. Down the street, a pickup eased to the curb, Travis's blue Ford, earned, not financed, its bed loaded with cedar planks. He hopped out, waving shyly. Evelyn waved back, heart steady. He managed monthly payments toward Haven Fund, smaller than debt demanded, but consistent. More impressive, he managed sobriety from the easy excuses of self-pity. Got your lumber, he called, lifting a bundle onto one shoulder. Sweat darkened his collar, but his stride was sure. Dell's crew planned a gazebo, shade for domino afternoons. Travis worked weekends, no charge. They met at the courtyard border where iris flared purple like proud flags. How you doing? Evelyn asked. One day, one ledger square, he said, quoting her. He set planks down, wiped brow. Brought someone. He glanced at the truck. A girl of 8 climbed out. Piper, his youngest. She wore paint-spattered overalls and clutched a packet of seeds. She wanted Grandma Evelyn to have these? Evelyn knelt, hip no longer screaming, only murmuring. Piper placed the packet in her palm. Forget-me-nots. Blue as robin eggs. Evelyn's throat thickened. We'll plant them by the gazebo, she said. Piper beamed, gap-toothed. They worked through afternoon, measuring posts, setting footers, Piper sprinkling seeds at each corner. Later they sat on the porch, lemonade sweating in glasses. Hattie joined, handing out still warm hand pies. Music drifted from someone's phone, Al Green crooning, Simply Beautiful, mixing with lawn sprinkler hiss. Residents dozed in shade. Rufus patrolled for crumbs, and over everything arched a sky so blue it seemed painted fresh. Evelyn smiled at Travis, who sat sanding a cedar slat. Lines of worry still marked his face, but new ones, born of honest labor, overlaid them like stitches reinforcing torn cloth. She reached into her pocket, felt the river stone. Fear's weight had polished it smooth, now it comforted like a rosary bead. She pressed it into Travis's calloused hand. "What's this?" "A stone I carried from winter into spring," she said. "It used to remind me of betrayal. Today it reminds me things change shape." He rolled it between thumb and forefinger, nodding. Evening settled gold over wheat fields beyond town, each head bowing as if in quiet amen. Evelyn rose, cane forgotten by her chair, and walked to the garden's edge. Crocus had given way to peony, and the peonies to roses she transplanted from memory. Their scent, heavy, forgiving, perfumed the hush. She whispered, "We did all right, Marvin," and imagined his reply swirling in the breeze. "Roof's still up, girl. Keep planting." Dinner plates clinked inside. Someone called for seconds on peach cobbler. Evelyn turned. The veranda lights blinked on, warm as hearths. In their glow, faces glimmered, some weather-edged, some baby-smooth, all bound by the quiet covenant of shelter. The path back to the house lay clear, stone-lined. She took it at measured pace, knowing seeds slept beneath, waiting for next rain. Her cane tapped gentle syncopation, once fear's drum, now simply rhythm. Behind her, Travis hammered the first gazebo rail, cedar singing under nail. Ahead, the doorway blazed, and beyond, night sky spilled its radiant quilt over Montana, stitch by luminous stitch. Evelyn stepped through, carrying the promise of morning in her palms.